We have a tendency to make wrong decisions at the wrong time. Never consider the consequences. What if those wrong decisions lead you to unexpected doom? Peter was an author. His published books did not earn him much money. On the other hand, Peter did not give up on his dream. Peter has always wanted to be an author since he was a child. With his wild imaginations and fantastic storyline ideas, he was confident that he would be successful, no matter how long it took. Peter's family advised him not to pursue his dream of becoming an author, because they believed it had a bleak future. But Peter was adamant. He overcame all of his obstacles and found success in his chosen field. Despite achieving his goals, he always had feelings of profound sadness. As his career progressed, brought him no profits. Peter was working on a new story about people who suffer in life. Peter portrayed the characters in the story based on his own life experience. He was optimistic about this story because many people were dealing with similar issues. He sent final draft of his story to some of the publishing companies. He waited for days to receive a reply from any of the companies. Peter hoped that the publishers would consider publishing his story as a book. A few days later, Peter received an email from one of the publishing companies. He opened the email and started reading. After reading the email, Peter was overjoyed to learn that the Ladybug Company had agreed to publish Peter's story as a book. Peter noticed while reading the email that the company wished to speak with him in person. The Ladybug Company provided the company's location for a meeting. Peter found out that the Ladybug Company was located in a certain town called Mystic Woods. Peter was unfamiliar with this town, so he looked up its exact location on the internet. He discovers that the town is quite far away. Peter was grateful for the opportunity, and he did not want to pass it up. He made a decision to pay the company a visit. Peter packed his belongings for his trip on the following day. The next day, Peter was on his way to Mystic Woods. Peter's thoughts were at ease. He finally believed his time had arrived. After a few hours, he arrived at the Mystic Woods. The town appeared to be enjoyable, with all of the joyful people. Peter was taken aback by the state of the town. It was so lively and upbeat. A few minutes later, Peter discovered the location of the Ladybug Company. He entered the building to meet with his publishers. When he met the publishers, Peter explained his entire concept about the book. The publishers were pleased with the book's plot after hearing Peter's explanation. They agreed on a publication date for the book. It took a while for Peter to finalize all of the necessary agreements with his publishers. After a long time, he felt hopeful. Peter stepped outside and noticed it was nearly dusk. He reasoned that driving home at this hour would be too risky. So Peter decided to spend the night at a nearby hotel and begin his journey the next morning. Peter drove all the way through the street valley, but he couldn't seem to find a hotel. He also noticed that there were no people on the streets, and that the most of the stores had already closed. Even though the street lights were turned on, the town was pitch black. He searched and searched but found no hotels. With no other options, Peter decided to drive back home. Peter drove for a short while after leaving the town. He was driving slowly down the narrow foggy road. After a few minutes of driving, Peter noticed a small light by the side of the road. He got closer to the light to see what it was. As Peter approached, he noticed a motel. The motel has the appearance of a wooden cottage and is surrounded by tall trees. From the outside, Peter wondered if it was a real motel, or just a random house in the woods. But Peter was relieved that he had found a temporary accommodation, because there were no other options. Suddenly, a creepy thought flashed through his mind. Peter did not see such a motel or any buildings along the road on his way to Mystic Woods town, because he returned on the same road. He was curious as to where this motel came from. Peter brushed aside his thoughts, assuming he had probably missed the motel on the way to town. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered, and it began to drizzle. Peter parked his car next to a tree and dashed towards the motel. The rain began to fall heavily as soon as he stepped in front of the front door. Peter rang the doorbell. At first, there was no response, but then the front door slowly opened. Peter walked inside and scanned his surroundings. There was no one in the reception area. The motel was simple and old. Peter noticed that the dim lights kept flickering like an abandoned place, which gave him a creepy feeling. Suddenly, he was startled to hear a woman's voice greet him. Peter turned around right away. He saw a woman dressed as a maid. She was giving him a creepy smile. Peter hesitated at first, but then broke the silence by greeting her and asking if any rooms were available for the night. The woman only smiled and nodded. She took a key from the drawer and asked for Peter to follow her. As Peter walked behind her, he couldn't seem to shake his bad feelings about the situation. But Peter didn't have a choice at the time. Peter saw old paintings from the medieval times in the hallways. The painting's condition appears to be bad as well. The woman suddenly came to a halt. "This is your room," she said as she turned to face Peter. She walked away after handing over the key. Peter entered the room after unlocking the door with a key. The room appeared to be modest. Every step Peter took on the floor made a creaking sound. The dim lighting in the room gave Peter the impression that he was in a haunted house. Peter stopped overthinking and went to sleep. He was hoping that the night would pass quickly, so that he could leave this place as soon as possible. Peter was half awake. He was unable to sleep properly. Suddenly, he heard a woman scream. Peter awoke immediately and sat on his bed. The woman's scream gets louder and louder. Peter assumed that his next-door neighbors were probably fighting. Then he heard a loud sound. A chair fell to the floor, making a loud noise. Peter thought that it would be best not to meddle in their affairs, so he ignored everything and went back to sleep. A few minutes later he heard the same noises, cries, and a loud falling noises. Peter had the impression that the entire scenario was replaying itself. Peter could not take it any longer. Peter opened his door. He noticed the hallway was dark. There were no lights turned on. He approached the next door and knocked. A wave of silence followed the knock. Peter knocked several times on the door but received no response. Peter noticed the door number while knocking. It was 666. Peter had an odd feeling about the entire situation. Peter attempts to open the door. The door was unexpectedly unlocked. When Peter opened the door, he witnessed a harrowing and terrifying event. A woman was hanging down from the ceiling. Her lifeless body was dripping with blood. Her body was facing Peter. Peter collapsed in shock. He sprinted to the reception area and yelled for help. Strangely, Nobody was there. Peter knocked on other room doors and called out for help, but no one from the inside opened the doors. Peter ran towards room 666. He began to shiver when he noticed the corpse of the hanging woman had vanished. Peter was at a loss for what to do. He ran to his room to call the cops. Unfortunately, he was unable to contact anyone due to poor reception. He heard a strange noise out of the blue, and when he turned to face the door, he noticed some strange roots covering his room's walls and floor. A terrifying figure appeared on the wall next to the door. The figure appears to be a woman, dressed in a brown long gown, with long white hair floating in the air. Her body was affixed to the wall. The woman had no eyes. She lifted her face and gave Peter a horrifying smile. Peter screamed and ran outside his room. He dashed out of the motel and towards his car. Peter attempted to start his car, but it appears that it was not working. He got out of his car and ran barefoot down the narrow road towards Mystic Woods town. The rain was pouring down heavily, but Peter kept running without looking back. He went to the nearby police station once he arrived in town. He told the cops everything and asked for their help. The cops went to the specified location and discovered nothing. There was no sign of a motel. The only thing left was Peter's car near the tree. The motel appears to have vanished from the place. If Peter had gone home instead of to the motel, he would not have witnessed such a horrific incident. His bad decision has taught him more than just a lesson. Be careful with the decisions you make. It's only a matter of time before your luck runs out.